It is 1:15 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, February 28th, 2026. There's a moment in the history of every war before anyone outside a handful of rooms knows it started. This is that moment. In Tampa, Florida, at U.S. Central Command Headquarters, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper has just given the order. 6,000 miles away in the North Arabian Sea, the guided missile destroyers of the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group are turning into the wind. Their vertical launch cells are hot. Their targeting solutions have been confirmed and reconfirmed for days. In the skies over the western Persian Gulf, in Iraq, in Jordan, over the eastern Mediterranean, hundreds of aircraft are already airborne, already on course, already past the point where anyone can call them back. In Tehran, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, 86 years old, the man who has ruled this country for 35 years, is at a meeting with senior officials. He does not know what is about to happen. In 90 seconds, the first Tomahawk cruise missiles will enter Iranian airspace. In 20 minutes, a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber flying at 42,000 feet over northwestern Iran will open its bomb bay doors. And by sunrise, the world will be different. This is Operation Epic Fury, Day 1. According to a CENTCOM fact sheet released February 28th, the operation's first priority was not a missile base, not a radar site, not a port. It was Iran's ability to see, hear, and command. Before a single bomb fell, U.S. Cyber Command, confirmed by Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane in a Monday press conference, had already been working for hours. His precise words, coordinated space and cyber operations effectively disrupted communications and sensor networks, leaving the adversary without the ability to see, coordinate, or respond effectively. Think about what that means. Iran's integrated air defense network, the system of radars, command relays, and surface-to-air missile batteries that represents decades of investment, and the lessons of watching the U.S. dismantle air defense networks from Iraq to Libya, was functionally blinded before the first Tomahawk left its canister. The air defense operators who survived that first hour didn't lose because they made bad decisions. They lost because the network their decisions depended on had already been quietly dismantled from the inside. The first shooters, confirmed by Joint Chiefs Chairman General Kane in his Monday Pentagon briefing, were Tomahawks from guided missile destroyers stretched across the Persian Gulf and the North Arabian Sea. Tomahawk Block 4 and Block 5 cruise missiles began launching in sequence. Each one drops a booster after launch, settles to wave-top altitude, 50 feet above the water, and navigates at 550 miles per hour on a route designed to thread through every known gap in Iranian coastal radar coverage. Not the shortest path to the target, the path least likely to be detected. In parallel, the first wave of Lucas drones, the low-cost unmanned combat attack system, was already 30 minutes into Iranian airspace. CENTCOM confirmed this publicly, calling it the first combat use of one-way attack drones in U.S. military history. The drones, developed by Spectre Works in Mesa, Arizona, are reverse-engineered from captured Iranian Shahed 136. They cost $35,000 each. They were flying directly at Iranian air defense batteries, not to destroy them, to make them fire. Every time an Iranian battery launched a $1 million plus interceptor at a $35,000 drone, that was a trade Iran was losing. Every time a battery radar went active to track a drone, it painted its own position onto the passive sensors of F-35s orbiting 60 miles away, quietly building a kill list. According to CENTCOM's own after-action statement, U.S. forces struck more than 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours. Nearly double the scale of the opening night of the 2003 Iraq invasion, according to a CENTCOM official cited by multiple outlets. The confirmed target categories, per CENTCOM's released fact sheet, IRGC Joint Headquarters. IRGC Aerospace Forces, Headquarters. Integrated Air Defense Systems. Ballistic missile storage and launch sites, Iranian Navy ships and submarines, anti-ship missile batteries, military communications infrastructure. That is not a list of targets. That is a list of functions. Every item describes a capability. Every strike was aimed not at infrastructure in the abstract, but at the specific thing that infrastructure allowed Iran to do. The goal was not destruction for its own sake, it was to map every node of Iran's military nervous system, and then sever every connection simultaneously, faster than the system could reroute around the cuts. Some of what Iran had built was underground, hardened, reinforced, tunneled into mountains specifically because every Iranian military planner for the past 30 years had been watching what happens when your military assets sit above ground when the US decides to act. For those targets, there is one aircraft in the American inventory that matters, the B-2 Spirit. Confirmed by Armada International and Defense Update, B-2 Spirit bombers flew from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. The exact mission profile is classified, but the round-trip distance from Whiteman to Iran and back exceeds 14,000 miles. At $170,000 per flight hour, the transit home costs more than most people's houses. It is also irrelevant because the B-2 is the only American aircraft that can fly into denied airspace at night, undetected, and deliver weapons that nothing else can carry to places nothing else can reach. The weapon designed for hardened underground facilities is the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, a 30,000-pound bomb that uses kinetic energy and delayed detonation to punch through up to 60 feet of reinforced concrete before it explodes. For caves and tunnels that don't have a reinforced ceiling, the weapon of choice is the GBU-31JDAM, 2,000 pounds, GPS guided, designed to penetrate and then detonate inside. What a B-2 strike on a hardened missile storage facility looks like is this. The aircraft approaches at altitude, typically 40,000 feet or above, on autopilot, engines inaudible from the ground, radar cross-section roughly the size of a large bird. The crew has been managing targeting solutions for hours, bomb bay doors open for a window of seconds, during which the aircraft's radar return multiplies sharply, a brief, unavoidable exposure. The weapons release. Doors close. The aircraft is already turning for the transit home before the first bomb impacts. The bombs themselves don't hit a building. They hit a specific structural point, a tunnel entrance, a vertical shaft, a ceiling hatch. The goal is not to destroy everything inside. It is to seal it. Rock cascading down a mountain face into a reinforced opening weighs hundreds of tons. It doesn't need to be melted or vaporized. It needs to not move again. Across northwestern and central Iran, in the mountain ranges around Tabriz, Isfahan, and deeper inland, confirmed by satellite imagery and subsequent CENTCOM statements, Iran's ballistic missile storage network, the deep underground infrastructure that gave Iran the ability to sustain a missile campaign for weeks or months, began to go dark. B-2 sorties continued through March 2nd, confirmed by Armada International reporting, targeting Iran's hardened ballistic missile facilities. By March 4th, the mix shifted toward conventional munitions as the high-end penetrator stock was managed carefully. While the bombers worked the interior, the Navy worked the coast. Confirmed by CENTCOM and independently verified by commercial satellite imagery from Vantor and Planet Labs. Within the first hours of Operation Epic Fury, US forces struck Iranian naval bases at Konarak and Bandar Abbas, Iran's two primary naval facilities on the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. The satellite imagery is unambiguous. Multiple fires at Konarak's pier, smoke columns at Bandar Abbas, sunken and damaged hulls visible in the water. Among the confirmed vessels struck in the opening hours, the Iris Shahid Bagheri, a container ship Iran converted into a drone carrier capable of operating Shahed series UAVs at sea, designated C-110-4. CENTCOM confirmed its destruction specifically and publicly. It was struck at its berthing in Bandar Abbas within the initial hours of the operation. A ship that could carry Iran's drone warfare capability out to sea beyond the range of ground-based launch sites was eliminated at the pier before it could leave port. The Iris Makran, Iran's largest support vessel and forward basing ship, confirmed by CENTCOM as struck at Bandar Abbas pier. Satellite photos show it ablaze, multiple frigates from the Bayandor, Alvand, and Jamaran classes, confirmed by USNI News, cross-referencing CENTCOM statements and satellite imagery. By day 2, CENTCOM stated publicly that all 11 Iranian warships in the Gulf of Oman had been destroyed or driven from the area. Joint Chiefs Chairman General Kane confirmed the destruction of Iran's naval headquarters in a Truth Social post amplified by Trump on day 2. Why the Navy first? Iran's strategy for a war with the United States has never been to fight the US Navy ship to ship. It has been to deny the strait, to mine the 21-mile throat of water that carries 20% of the world's oil, to threaten tankers with fast attack craft and anti-ship missiles until the insurance premium for transiting Hormuz becomes prohibitive, to turn the Persian Gulf into a liability. The Iris Shahid Bagheri wasn't just a ship. It was the capability to see drones across the Arabian Sea. The same Shahed drones that had been flying at American bases and Gulf cities for 2 years. Hitting it at the pier was not about the ship, it was about the function. The frigates at Konarak and Bandar Abbas were not a blue water fleet that could challenge the Abraham Lincoln, but a Jamaran-class corvette armed with anti-ship missiles, operating in the shallow coastal water, using Iranian knowledge of every rock and reef along its own coast. That is a very different threat than it looks on paper. Those ships, untouched, would have made every Navy transit into the strait a managed risk rather than a controlled environment. The Navy's first night task was to remove the ambiguity, to turn the Gulf from a contested space into an American operating area. Within 48 hours of the operation's start, Admiral Cooper stated CENTCOM had effectively sunk or disabled the entire Iranian conventional naval presence in the Gulf of Oman. The word he used in a video statement, annihilated. At some point during the morning of February 28th, local time in Tehran, a strike hit the compound associated with the Supreme Leader's Office and Leadership House. Iranian state media confirmed his death in the early hours of March 1st. Trump announced it on Truth Social on the afternoon of February 28th. Khamenei, one of the most evil people in history, is dead. An NPR source briefed on the strike attributed it to Israel. Trump did not confirm the attribution in his public statements. The IDF confirmed separately that among those killed in Day 1 strikes were Iran's defense minister and the commander of the Revolutionary Guard. CBS News, citing an intelligence source and a military source, reported 40 Iranian officials killed in the strikes, though the source noted they could not confirm whether those officials were in one location or multiple locations. The Financial Times reported, and Stimson Center analysis corroborated, that intelligence from compromised traffic cameras and mobile phone networks contributed to the targeting. Khamenei's meeting with senior officials, the specific gathering that determined the timing of the strike, was surfaced through that intelligence picture. This is what the Cyber Operations General Kane confirmed we're actually doing in the hours before the first bomb fell. Not just jamming radar, building a targeting package in real time from inside Iran's own communication infrastructure. The assassination of a head of state by US military action is, to be direct, without modern American precedent. The strategic logic, eliminating the command authority that controls Iran's nuclear decision-making and retaliatory coordination, was clear. The legal and political controversy was immediate and ongoing. Senator Bernie Sanders called it an illegal, premeditated, and unconstitutional war. Congressional leaders from both parties raised War Powers Act concerns. Those debates are real, and they matter. They are outside the scope of this video, but they are not separate from what happened on Day 1. The Israeli component of Day 1, confirmed by Jintz's March 1st briefing, citing official Israeli military statements, 200 Israeli Air Force jets struck approximately 500 targets across Iran in the opening day of what Israel designated Operation Roaring Lion. The assets confirmed by Armada International, F-35, I-Adirs, F-15 I-Rams, and F-16 I-Sufas, the full spectrum of Israel's deep strike capability. On the American side, CENTCOM confirmed 900 strikes in the first 12 hours alone. The confirmed American inventory deployed B-2 Spirit, B-1 Lancer, B-52H, F-22 Raptors Forward deployed to Avda Air Base in Israel, F-35s, F-15, E-Strike Eagles, F-16Cs, A-10s, EA-18G, Growlers for electronic warfare, MQ-9 Reapers, RSC 135 reconnaissance aircraft, E-3 and E-11 airborne early warning and command platforms operating from Jordan and Israel. And for the first time in combat history, HIMARS equipped with the Precision Strike Missile, or PRSM, a ground-launched weapon with a range exceeding 300 miles fired against Iranian missile launchers and air defense assets from regional bases. This was not a strike package. It was a synchronized multi-domain offensive at a scale the Middle East had not seen since 2003, and by CENTCOM's own account, larger. Iran's response began while its air defenses were still being dismantled. Confirmed across multiple sources, Iran launched approximately 420 missiles and drones across 9 countries and ships at sea in the first 24 hours of retaliation. The targeting, per the Jinsa March 1st briefing, broke down roughly as 39% aimed at Israel, approximately 162 missiles, 40% at the UAE, 167 missiles, 11% at Qatar, approximately 46 missiles, the remainder distributed across Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, Iraq, and commercial shipping. In Bahrain, the Patriot battery at Naval Support Activity Bahrain engaged a wave of Shahed kamikaze drones moving up the Gulf at low altitude before dawn. The battery commander's problem, in that moment, was arithmetic. A PAC-3 interceptor costs $4 million. A Shahed costs $30,000. The math favors Iran in a long engagement, not because the Shahed wins, but because the interceptor magazine empties. And while both batteries worked the drone wave bearing northeast, Iran's most advanced weapon, a maneuvering ballistic warhead, came in near vertically from directly above. Of everything Iran threw at Bahrain, 2 weapons got through. A service center took damage. The satellite uplink dish was destroyed. CENTCOM confirmed the comms rerouted within minutes. Jordan, confirmed by the Jordanian government, intercepted 49 drones and ballistic missiles threatening its territory. The country hosts major American military bases and had to make real-time interception decisions about weapons crossing its airspace. At Al Udeid Air Base, in Qatar, Patriot MSE batteries engaged Iranian ballistic missiles in stacks, second salvo climbing before the first had even been intercepted, designed to keep the batteries cycling without a reload gap. CENTCOM confirmed hundreds of Iranian missiles and drone attacks were successfully intercepted across the region. At Al Dhafra in the UAE, THAAD fired in defense of an American base under direct Iranian barrage for the first time. CENTCOM confirmed the base operated without interruption, not a pothole on the runway, per the after-action reporting. In Kuwait, the scale of the engagement was something no missile defense system had been designed for. Sustained, multi-hour ballistic and missile and drone salvos. The Patriot batteries worked through reload after reload, ground crews swapping canisters between launches. By the end of the first night, Kuwait's batteries had logged one of the most sustained air defense engagements in the history of the system. 3 U.S. service members were killed and 5 others seriously wounded in the initial period of operations, confirmed by CENTCOM in a statement issued Sunday morning. The names and details of those killed were not released in the initial CENTCOM statement. The IRGC made what CENTCOM would later describe as Iran's biggest strategic mistake of day one. They launched ballistic missiles at the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. CENTCOM confirmed publicly no U.S. Navy ships were struck. The Abraham Lincoln and its escorts remained fully operational throughout the engagement. Iranian state media claimed a hit on the Lincoln. CENTCOM's response was precise. The only carrier that has been hit is Shahid Bagheri, an Iranian drone carrier. The Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group's Aegis radar system, the SPY-1D phased array, 4 affixed faces per ship, no moving parts, began tracking inbound ballistic tracks before they cleared Iranian airspace. That is not a figure of speech. The geometry of ballistic missile flight means a ship 300 miles away can compute an intercept solution, while the missile is still climbing to apogee. SM-3 interceptors launched from the strike group's destroyers, exo-atmospheric intercept, above the weather, above the air at the edge of space. The kinetic warhead, roughly the size of a basketball, steers itself using puffs of nitrogen gas into a closing geometry measured in milliseconds. No explosive, just mass meeting mass at Mach 13. For the Shahed drones that tried to come in low, under the radar coverage, the strike group's rolling airframe missiles handled the terminal defense, confirmed by CENTCOM imagery. 2 drones intercepted at wavetop range, wreckage visible from the Lincoln's flight deck. Not a single Iranian weapon touched the carrier or any ship in the formation. 15 minutes after the last intercept, the flight deck was cleared and the catapults were building pressure for the next launch cycle. But this cycle wasn't defensive. Every pylon was loaded. Every jet was headed for Iran. Iran's missile salvo had bought them 15 minutes of empty flight deck. The answer was not more interceptors. It was JDA Mulse. The engagement that most of the world didn't see on day one happened 20 nautical miles south of Sri Lanka. The Iranian frigate Iris Dana, a 1,500-ton Bayandor-class vessel, was sunk in the Indian Ocean on February 28th. Pentagon periscope footage of the sinking was released publicly. The bow pitching skyward as the aft section dragged it down is visible in that footage. The weapon was a Mark 48 AD cap torpedo, the standard weapon of the Los Angeles-class attack submarine. The Mark 48 is 21 inches in diameter, runs on a monopropellant that requires no air intake and leaves no exhaust bubble trace. A wire spooled behind it connects it to the fire control console of the firing ship for the entire run. CENTCOM confirmed all 11 Iranian vessels in the Gulf of Oman were destroyed or denied within 48 hours. The Dina was among those vessels. The sub that fired had been trailing her for hours, managing a targeting solution against a ship that was zigzagging, running active sonar, and had an ASW helicopter on her flight deck, every evasive measure available to a frigate that knows it might be hunted. The Mark 48's magnetic influence fuse detonates beneath the keel at the optimal point, directly under the structural spine of the ship. The resulting pressure bubble lifts the stern out of the water. When the bubble collapses, the keel snaps under a load no ship was designed to carry. It is, as the technical manuals describe it, a catastrophic kill. The Pentagon footage makes it real. Not a diagram, not a simulation, a 1,500-ton Iranian warship folding in half in the pre-dawn Indian Ocean. By day 2, CENTCOM confirmed 20 Iranian naval vessels sunk or critically damaged, including one submarine. The word annihilated, used by Admiral Cooper, was not rhetorical. It was operational. By the time the sun set on February 28, 2026, this is what Day 1 of Operation Epic Fury had produced. In confirmed operational terms, more than 900 US strikes in the first 12 hours alone, a further 500 targets hit by 200 Israeli jets. More than 1,000 total US targets struck in the first 24 hours. Iran's IRGC Joint Headquarters and Aerospace Forces Headquarters, its military communications infrastructure, and significant elements of its integrated air defense network, degraded or destroyed. Iran's conventional naval presence in the Gulf of Oman, assessed destroyed by CENTCOM within 48 hours. Iran's supreme leader killed, confirmed by Iranian state media. Iran's defense minister and IRGC commander killed, confirmed by the IDF. And in the skies over Iran, something had shifted that cannot be put in a fact sheet, confirmed by Armada International. Non-stealthy B-1 Lancer bombers, the biggest conventional bomb trucks in the American arsenal, carrying up to 75,000 pounds of ordnance per aircraft, flew directly from Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota on 30-plus hour missions, and operated over Iranian airspace without being shot down. You do not fly a B-1 into a country with a functioning integrated air defense network. By mid-morning on February 28th, Iran no longer had one. The cyber operations had blinded the network before the first bomb fell. The Lucas drones had emptied the forward missile defense magazines in the early morning. The EA-18G Growlers jammed what was left. The F-35s passively cataloged every radar emission that survived the first wave and passed coordinates to shooters who were already airborne and loaded. And then everything arrived at once. Tomahawks from the south, B-2S from the west, Israeli jets from multiple vectors, carrier air from the Arabian Sea. Iran's air defense commanders didn't make bad decisions. They didn't get to make decisions at all. There is a version of how to describe what happened on February 28th, 2026 that is purely operational. A target list executed at extraordinary scale and speed, with minimal American losses and unprecedented coordination between US and Israeli forces. By the purely military metrics, Day 1 was, in the words of CENTCOM's own public statements, an extraordinary success. There's another version that is harder to hold alongside the first one. 40 Iranian officials killed in a single day, per CBS News sourcing. Hundreds of civilians dead across Iran, per the Iranian Red Crescent Society. A girls' elementary school in Minab struck on the first day, confirmed, and under investigation. A Russian consulate in Isfahan damaged. The French and Italian governments confirming their military installations in the region were hit by Iranian retaliation. The US Embassy in Kuwait closed after taking a direct missile strike. 6 American service members killed in the first 4 days of the operation, including the 6 crew members of a KC-135 that crashed in Iraq on March 14th. War at this scale produces all of these things simultaneously. The precision of the weapons does not make the consequences of their use more precise. Every air defense system that was destroyed was real infrastructure, with real operators. Every missile battery that was silenced was protecting a country that believed it had the right to defend itself. The history of what happened on February 28th, 2026, what it was for, whether it was worth it, whether the strategic objective was achievable by these means, will be argued for decades. What is not argued, what the confirmed operational record establishes beyond dispute, is the scale of what was planned, the precision with which it was executed, and the speed at which an entire regional military architecture was dismantled in a single night. The $35,000 drone flew into $1 million battery until the battery ran dry. The B-2 flew 14,000 miles and opened its doors for 10 seconds over a mountain, and the mountain sealed itself shut. The submarine sat 400 feet below the thermocline for hours and waited for a geometry that came down to meters. The carrier turned back into the wind 15 minutes after the last intercept. This is what modern American military power looks like when it moves without restraint. The question that Day 1 could not answer, and that none of the 17 days that followed it have answered either, is what comes next, in a region where the Strait of Hormuz remains contested, where Iran still has enriched uranium no one has fully accounted for, and where the new supreme leader has said publicly that Iran is ready to defend ourselves as long as it takes. Day one ended. The war didn't. Subscribe to Navi Radar for more real military breakdowns.